Hello there. So, in Act I, we are introduced to a world full of secrets, fake identities, dramatic conversations, and plenty of comedy, including the famous cucumber sandwiches. As we go through the act, we will see how the characters constantly deceive one another while trying to appear respectable and proper. One of the most important lines in The Importance of Being Earnest is when Algernon says, "The truth is rarely pure and never simple." I mentioned in the prologue too, and there is where you read it. This line is not just a funny joke, it introduces one of the main ideas of the entire play. In this world, people constantly hide the truth, pretend to be someone else, or create complicated lies to escape social rules and responsibilities. As the story continues, we begin to realize that almost nothing is exactly what it seems. At the beginning of The Importance of Being Earnest, we are in Algernon's elegant London apartment. But instead of worrying about truly important problems, Algernon is focused on silly things, like his piano playing and the missing cucumber sandwiches that were prepared for his strict Aunt Augusta. This scene immediately shows the kind of world the play takes place in. Serious issues are often treated like jokes, while small and unimportant things become dramatic crises. Oscar Wilde uses this humor to make fun of the upper-class society of his time. Then Algernon's friend arrives, a man we are first introduced to as Ernest Worthing. He has come from the countryside to visit London, hoping to enjoy himself and escape his responsibilities for a while. At first, he seems much more serious and respectable than Algernon, but very quickly we begin to see that he also has secrets and double lives hiding beneath the surface. This sets up one of the main conflicts of the play, the difference between how people appear in society and who they really are underneath. And then we discover the real reason Ernest has come to London. He plans to propose to Gwendolen, who is Algernon's cousin. Algernon immediately jokes that marriage proposals are simply business. To him, romance becomes less exciting the moment it turns serious and official. This is another example of Oscar Wilde's humor. Algernon treats something most people consider deeply important, love and marriage, as if it were just another boring social duty. But then Algernon suddenly stops the whole conversation. He says that Ernest cannot propose to Gwendolen yet. Why? Because of a cigarette case that was accidentally left behind during an earlier visit. Inside the case is a very interesting message, and it immediately reveals that something about Ernest's identity does not seem completely truthful. Algernon asks one simple but important question: who is Cecily? The message inside the cigarette case mentions someone named Cecily, and Algernon immediately becomes suspicious. Ernest tries to avoid answering and acts like it is not important, but Algernon refuses to let the subject go. He knows the cigarette case is proof that his friend is hiding something. The inscription inside the cigarette case reveals two very important clues. First, the message is written to Uncle Jack, not to Ernest. Second, it is signed by someone named Little Cecily. In that moment, Algernon realizes that his friend is hiding his true identity. The man everyone knows as Ernest is actually named Jack. This is the first major revelation in the play, and it begins the pattern of hidden identities and deception that drives the story forward. At this point, Jack's story completely falls apart. He says his name is Ernest, but the cigarette case clearly calls him Jack. Then he tries to explain Cecily away, but the inscription from Little Cecily makes it obvious that she is not his aunt. Algernon has caught him in multiple lies, and Jack can no longer avoid the truth. He is finally forced to confess his secret. Jack's confession introduces one of the funniest and most important ideas in The Importance of Being Earnest, living a double life. Algernon gives this behavior a special name: bunburying. Bunburying means creating fake people or fake excuses so you can escape your responsibilities and live a more exciting life. Jack admits that In the countryside, he is known as the serious and responsible Jack, but in the city, he pretends to be Ernest, a more carefree and adventurous version of himself. This idea of double identities becomes one of the main sources of comedy and conflict throughout the play. Here is Jack's secret. In the countryside, his real name is Jack Worthing, and he acts like a serious, responsible guardian to his young ward, Cecily. But Jack finds that life dull and restrictive, so he invents a fake younger brother named Ernest who supposedly lives in London and constantly gets into trouble. Whenever Jack wants to escape to the city and enjoy himself, he claims he must go help his irresponsible brother Ernest. The funny twist, of course, is that Jack himself is pretending to be Ernest in London. He created an imaginary brother so he could secretly live a second life. And then we discover that Jack is not the only person living a double life. Algernon has created a fake person too. His imaginary friend is named Bunbury, and he is supposedly always sick. Whenever Algernon wants to avoid a boring dinner party or an unpleasant responsibility, he simply claims that poor Bunbury has become ill again and needs his help. This is where the idea of Bunburying comes from. Oscar Wilde uses this joke to criticize upper-class society. The characters feel so trapped by social expectations and duties that they invent fake people and fake emergencies just to escape their everyday lives. Jack decides that he wants to stop living a double life. He believes that if Gwendolen agrees to marry him, he will no longer need to pretend to be Ernest. So Jack announces that he plans to kill off his imaginary brother Ernest and finally live honestly as himself. Algernon jokingly helps him come up with ideas for Ernest's fake death. He suggests that a severe chill or illness would sound believable. This dark but playful conversation is another example of Oscar Wilde's humor. The characters talk about inventing and killing fake people as casually as discussing the weather. Right then, Lady Bracknell and her daughter Gwendolen arrive at Algernon's apartment. Lady Bracknell is a powerful and intimidating woman who cares deeply about social status and proper behavior. Algernon quickly finds a way to distract his aunt and lead her out of the room. This leaves Jack alone with Gwendolen and finally gives him the chance to propose to her. But then a huge problem appears. Gwendolen tells Jack that she has always dreamed of loving a man named Ernest. She says there is something special and trustworthy about the name itself. The problem, of course, is that Jack's real name is not Ernest. Gwendolen is not simply in love with him as a person. She is deeply attached to the idea and image connected to the name Ernest. Suddenly, Jack realizes that his plan to give up his fake identity may become much more complicated. Before Jack can figure out how to deal with this problem, Lady Bracknell returns and immediately takes control of the situation. What follows is not a warm conversation about love or marriage. Instead, Lady Bracknell treats Jack like someone being questioned in an official interview. Her questions become more and more serious and ridiculous at the same time, creating one of the funniest scenes in the play. Lady Bracknell's standards for a husband are both ridiculous and hilarious. She is pleased that Jack smokes because she believes a man should always have some kind of occupation. She even says that ignorance can be a valuable quality. Jack's money and social position also seem acceptable to her. For a while, it looks like Jack is passing her strange interview perfectly. But then Lady Bracknell asks the one question that changes everything. Who are Jack's parents and family? When Jack admits that he is an orphan, Lady Bracknell responds with one of the most famous and shocking lines in The Importance of Being Earnest. Her reaction is completely absurd because she treats being an orphan as if it were some kind of personal failure or bad behavior. Oscar Wilde uses this moment to make fun of how obsessed upper-class society was with family background, status, and reputation. The scene is funny because Lady Bracknell cares less about Jack's character and more about whether his family history fits society's expectations. And this moment also sets up one of the play's biggest and most ridiculous revelations later on. Jack tries to explain his situation more carefully. He says that losing his parents is not really the correct description. Then he reveals something much stranger. He was found as a baby. With those words, the mystery around Jack's identity becomes even more unusual and dramatic, adding another layer of comedy and confusion to the play. Yes, Jack reveals something completely unbelievable. He was discovered as a baby inside a handbag. He even carefully explains that it was a large black leather handbag, as if that detail somehow makes the situation more respectable. This absurd revelation becomes one of the funniest moments in the play. Oscar Wilde uses the ridiculous story to mock how seriously society judged people based on their family background and social status. Jack continues explaining the story in a completely serious and calm way, which makes the scene even funnier. He says that the handbag was discovered in the cloakroom of Victoria Station on the Brighton railway line in London. The comedy comes from the contrast between the ridiculous situation and the formal, polite way Jack describes it. Oscar Wilde turns this unbelievable story into comedy by having the characters discuss it as if it were a perfectly normal social problem. As you might expect, Lady Bracknell is completely horrified by Jack's story. To her, being connected to a handbag at a train station is socially unacceptable, no matter how polite or wealthy Jack may be. Because of this, she immediately rejects the idea of Jack marrying Gwendolen. The proposal is shut down almost instantly. Lady Bracknell gives her final judgment by saying that her family cannot allow Gwendolen to form an alliance with a parcel. The line is both cruel and funny. By comparing Jack to a lost package, she shows how obsessed she is with social class, family background, and appearances. Oscar Wilde uses this moment to criticize a society that values status more than a person's actual character or kindness. And after delivering this harsh verdict, Lady Bracknell dramatically leaves the room. Lady Bracknell gives her final judgment by saying that her family cannot allow Gwendolen to form an alliance with a parcel. The line is funny but also incredibly harsh. By comparing Jack to a lost package, she makes it clear that, in her mind, his unknown background matters more than who he actually is as a person. This moment perfectly shows one of Oscar Wilde's main criticisms of upper-class Victorian society. People are judged not by their kindness or character, but by their family name, social position, and reputation. And with that cold final statement, Lady Bracknell sweeps dramatically out of the room. And that is where Act I ends on a perfect cliffhanger. Algernon has secretly overheard everything, including Jack's country address. Before leaving, he quietly writes the address down on his shirt cuff. Right away, we can tell he is planning some kind of trouble. It seems very likely that Algernon's imaginary sick friend Bunbury is about to make a sudden and convenient recovery so Algernon can escape to the countryside himself. To discover what kind of chaos this creates, we have to continue into Act 2. And as you read, pay close attention to the language and humor. Many of the funniest moments appear suddenly and unexpectedly in ordinary conversations. What makes the play special is not just the plot, but the clever details, the irony, and the hidden jokes inside the dialogue. Being able to notice and understand those details is what helps you move beyond simply following the story and develop stronger literary analysis skills than many of your peers. So go read and have fun.
If you'd like more personalized feedback, writing support, and discussion sessions, they're available with me or with our selected tutors. All the details are here.